guys, back again for another micro lecture. It's an anatomy lecture, actually, not a microbiology lecture. I mean micro like small. Okay, we were reviewing these horns in the gray matter, and we've been talking about how the lateral and ventral horns, so this guy right here, are going to be motor. So what I'm going to see here are my somatic motor neurons coming out. Somatic motor neurons are these red guys right here. Somatic motor axons coming out of the front of the spinal cord. The yellow guys are my autonomic or visceral motor, also coming out that front of the spinal cord. Meanwhile, I got my sensory neurons, my autonomic and my somatic sensory neurons coming in to the back of the spinal cord, going into the dorsal horn. Fantastic. Let's keep on going. So, as we just saw, let me actually go back for a second. As we just saw, these neurons going in, we got neurons going in and neurons going out. And we actually fuse them into this big bundle. This big bundle is called a spinal nerve. And since we have spinal nerves taking information in and out of the cord, we need to look at the anatomy of a nerve. So let's do that. This is the basic structure of a nerve, like that spinal nerve we just saw. If you think about this, a nerve itself is a bundle. So it is a bundle, it is a group of axons, and it is found outside your brain, outside your spinal cord. It is found in your PNS. So, bundle of axons in the PNS is a nerve. Now, if we start with a single axon wrapped in Schwann cells, myelin sheath, and then the Schwann cells have a connective tissue covering called the endoneurium. Now, that endoneurium, the basic job of it is to attach to other endoneuriums to let us group together axons. And so what I have here is a group of axons. This group of axons is called a fascicle. And then we surround the fascicle with a thicker layer of connective tissue called the perineurium. And then what we do is we take a bunch. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 fascicles plus an artery and a vein, and we group them all together and put a really thick layer of connective tissue around them. And that final thick layer of connective tissue is the epineurium. And then this whole thing right here, this whole thing is a nerve. Yeah. So nerves are carrying information in and out of that cord. We see that spinal nerve there, and we just looked at the anatomy of a nerve. Okay, now, what we gotta do is start seeing what happens to that spinal nerve. Okay, got several things to point out for you here, all right? Bear with me here. We got our spinal cord. All right, there's our spinal cord right there. Put an S on it. There is our dorsal horn, our lateral horn, and our ventral horn. We know that sensory axons go into the dorsal horn and motor axons come out of the ventral and lateral horns. Now, what I see first are small bundles of axons. The small bundles of axons are called ventral and dorsal rootlets. So right over here, this black arrow is on the ventral rootlets. This black arrow is on the dorsal rootlets. Ventral rootlets are, of course, motor. Dorsal rootlets are, of course, sensory. Now what happens is the rootlets connect to form bigger bundles called roots. So this green arrow right here is on the ventral root. It is motor. This green arrow right here is on the dorsal root. It is sensory. So it's like we're going from bigger to bigger and bigger bundles of axons. Rootlets are a small bundle. Rootlets combine to form roots, which are bigger bundles. And then what happens is my two roots combine to make my spinal nerve. So if I look right here, this guy right here is my ventral root, right there. This guy right here is my dorsal root, right there. Those two guys combine to then make my spinal nerve. Now, just before the spinal nerve does that combination, the dorsal root has a swelling called the dorsal root ganglion. That swelling exists because the dorsal root is sensory, and we know sensory neurons are unipolar. So we're going to have a ganglion there. A ganglion is a collection of neuron cell bodies. All right, let's see if I have the next picture that I'm thinking of. No, I need to go back for a second. My bad, folks. I want to go back. Bear with me, bear with me, bear with me. There we go. Check out these sensory neurons here. Okay, the blue and the green guy. The blue and the green guy. So here's our dorsal root. Sensory neuron axons going in. But remember, in a unipolar neuron, the cell body, this little dot here, this little dot here, those are the cell bodies. They're along the axon. Whereas the motor ones, the motor cell bodies are here in the gray matter. The sensory cell bodies are right here. So we have to have a collection of cell bodies along the axon, thus in the nerve. And we call that collection the dorsal root ganglion. Sweet. Okay. Let's keep going. We did that. We just looked at that. We got more anatomy to do. Raise your hand if you love anatomy. Awesome. It's a lot of you out there raised your hands. That's good. That's good. So, spinal nerve. Spinal nerve is this red guy right here. SN for spinal nerve. The spinal nerve almost immediately starts to branch. And when the spinal nerve has its first branches, we're going to get a big one to the front called the ventral ramus and a smaller one to the back called the dorsal ramus. Now, if you think about it, there's more stuff to the front of the spinal cord than there is to the back of the spinal cord. So it makes sense that the ventral ramus should be a bigger branch than the dorsal ramus. And in fact, it is. Okay. The dorsal ramus, like we just alluded to, is going to carry motor and sensory signals, to and from the back, the posterior trunk. Whereas the ventral ramus, I just labeled a different one down here because there are lots of them. The ventral ramus is going to carry motor and sensory signals to and from the anterior trunk as well as the limbs. Okay, now bear in mind there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So there have to be 31 pairs of ventral rami and 31 pairs of dorsal rami. 31 pairs of ventral roots, 31 pairs of dorsal roots, 31 pairs of dorsal root ganglia as well. Okay, if I look at this picture here, I see my dorsal ramus going to the skin and muscle in the back, and I see my ventral ramus going, in this case, to the skin and muscle in my trunk. It would also go to my limbs. All right, this ends this mini lecture. I'll see you guys next time.